The recession, started by irresponsible banking practices in the West, has taken its toll on the Islamic world, just like everywhere else. Home to countries with some of the highest poverty rates in the world, a swift recovery is crucial. But the Islamic world has some key strengths that may help it on the road to recovery, not least Islamic finance, which has fared much better than its Western counterparts.
An urban village in the heart of Jakarta. Life here has taken a turn for the worse in the past year. When we met this family of vegetable sellers last May, their big worry was inflation eating away at their meager income. 9 months on, their worries are wider and more intense.
My business is pretty quiet. I rarely see buyers now because the prices are high. We just eat what we can afford to eat. We have to cut back our spending.
The Asian financial crisis in the late 90s eroded a lot of the gains developing Muslim countries like Indonesia had made in tackling poverty. There's a real danger of something similar happening again now.
We do hope that the internal or intra-cooperation among our member countries could minimize this, because, as you know, some of our member countries are less affected, like the GCC countries.
The Islamic Development Bank is itself looking to tap some of that Gulf money in an effort to boost its lending to poorer Muslim countries by some 15% this year. It's aiming to issue an Islamic bond or sukuk to raise the needed funds.
Of World Islamic Economic Forum.
Islamic finance stood out at this week's World Islamic Economic Forum as one of the very few areas still breeding optimism.
The omens for the industry still remain good because the relative growth in Asia and the Middle East, where Muslim populations are concentrated, the economic outlook for countries remains positive, and Islamic finance will have a role, an increasing role, in serving the needs of the populations in these countries, and we still believe that it still has a lot of growth yet to offer.
Islamic finance is based on Sharia law. It prohibits the charging of interest or trading in goods considered haram, prohibited by Islam.
Islamic banking should now be able to take leadership position in the banking world. Islamic banks have been much less affected by the financial meltdown.
That's because Islamic financial institutions don't trade in debt, such as subprime mortgages. And the greater transparency of Islamic finance could prove a powerful selling point.
Effectively, there is always going to be an underlying business transaction. So you're not looking at vapor or a derivative on a derivative on a derivative. There will be an underlying business reason or asset underlying it, which effectively is a very conservative way of looking at doing business.
While Islamic finance is faring better, it's still far from immune from the impact of the downturn, with the scale of Islamic bonds, or sukuk, issued last year declining sharply. Still, some expect that to turn around quickly.
This year, what I sense is that governments will look at sukuk as a way of creating interest and restoring confidence in economies. And you've already seen announcements from Indonesia and from Singapore of sovereign sukuk. And I believe that will be a way forward for many of the GCC states in order to keep, drip feeding money into the economy. That would be a good way of doing it.
Several non-Muslim countries are now showing a keen interest in developing their Islamic financial sectors. And though they may in some ways be competing with Muslim countries, most see the trend as nothing but positive.
That it's actually very important in the build-out of an industry and its infrastructure that you have the centers of global finance, whether they're London or they're Hong Kong or they're Singapore or they're New York or they're Frankfurt, all engaged in this process, because that's what helps to build and drive an industry.
Still, despite the promising outlook and more than 10% annual growth in recent years, the Islamic financial system is still very much in its infancy.
It has plenty of growth potential as we look ahead, but we need to be rational about how quickly we can expect it to become larger significantly than it is today.
In the shadow of Jakarta's tallest high-rise, the rosy prospects for Islamic finance do nothing to ease the day-to-day worries about survival.
I just hope that the economy will recover quickly and will go back to like the good days, be stable like before.
A hope Muslim and non-Muslim, rich and poor, will all share.